Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. We are about to begin shortly, but until we do, we want to play you two videos about the Army profession. The first one is the Army profession video, and the second one is a standards and discipline video, which is about the first quarterly theme of America's Army Our Profession Education and Training Program. We'll begin shortly. Thank you.
The Army profession is comprised serving under civilian authority, entrusted to defend the Constitution and the rights and interest of the American people.
What we've seen over the last 10 years is the creation of the most effective land force the world has ever known. We have seen through the incredible sacrifices, the flexibility, the adaptability of the American soldier, the accumulation of an awesome power. The United States Army is the greatest force for good the world has ever seen.
Army leaders sustain the profession at all levels and within each cohort. The Army profession is an exceptional calling, one that demands special people to accept it, and a unique set of standards to maintain it. Those standards come from the 5 essential characteristics of the profession: trust, military expertise, honorable service, esprit de corps, and stewardship. Trust. A positive relationship with the American people based on mutual trust and respect is the lifeblood of the Army profession.
Trust continues to be the bedrock of our profession. Trust between soldiers, trust between soldiers and leaders, and trust between the Army and the American public.
The American people give us, especially lieutenants, platoon leaders, their sons and daughters, and they trust us to bring them home safe after going to combat.
We need to keep that trust. We need to keep reminding the American people that we are professionals and we will always do the best we can to not only defend them but represent them.
The reason we have to have trust in the Army and in our profession is that what we're asked to do are very critical things, sometimes life and death. And we must be completely reliant on those to our right, to our left, senior to us, and junior to us.
When you're with your soldiers and you're in harm's way, you become solely focused on their safety and the accomplishment of the mission. It doesn't matter if you're tired, it doesn't matter if you're sick, it doesn't matter if you're hurt. You always have to accomplish that mission, and you have to look after the welfare of your soldiers.
Military expertise. The Army's specific knowledge for the defense of the nation. The design, generation, support, and application of land power, and the subsequent establishment of a better peace.
Being a professional is a widespread of knowledge that I'm the subject matter expert of my job, that I not only know my job, but the guy next to me, before me and after me.
The Army and the military in general is big on training soldiers as best as it can. And there's a constant want and a need to educate and help its soldiers improve themselves through becoming better subject matter experts.
It's my duty to be an expert. It's my duty to be able to make moral and ethical decisions in tough positions and in tough places, and be there to lead my soldiers to do the same.
Honorable service. It's the noble and honorable purpose of preserving peace, supporting and defending the Constitution, and protecting the American people virtuously with integrity and respect for human dignity in accordance with the Army ethic.
I think it's the values that we live by in the Army, those things like duty, honor, country, selfless service. Those are the kinds of things that the American people want to see in their leaders, and they do see it in the United States Army.
Our trust that we have established with the American people is maintained through a moral and ethical standard that has to be upheld, especially in combat.
We as Americans are blessed in so many ways, and we need to defend that and to protect that. I feel that that is my responsibility.
It's an honor to be in the military because there are people that are unable to serve their country this way. Every day I come on post, I think about all the lives of those before me have sacrificed themselves for us to each have that right to do the same thing.
Esprit de corps, a culture that sustains traditions, respects customs, and creates a sense of belonging by inspiring martial excellence and the fortitude to never quit. Winning in combat is the only acceptable outcome.
Esprit de corps plays a role in the profession because it is how we see ourselves. It's the excitement and the energy that we take to the task at hand.
I'm a trained professional in combat, so to say that I'm carrying on a tradition of patriots defending their nation, it really just adds a lot of pride.
It's just a way of life. It's not made for everybody. The people I've deployed with, I'd give my life for them, and they would do the same for me.
You have to be passionate about this profession. It requires a lot of commitment, sacrifices for the soldier, his family, his loved ones. It's a part of you.
So that esprit de corps, that camaraderie, that, hey, I'm part of something bigger than myself and I'm proud of it, defines us as professional soldiers also.
Stewardship, our moral responsibility to ensure the long-term effectiveness of the Army as a trusted military profession.
To be human is to take care of other people. The Army just makes it the right environment for me to embrace that and to preach and teach it and execute and live those values.
It demonstrates character. It really shows who you are down to your moral fiber, who you want to be and what you really stand for.
A professional is a standard bearer for society, and society looks at them in a higher light. It's not only their duty to provide a service to others, but it's also important for people to look up to them, to see them in a positive light and wish to emulate them.
We know what makes us professionals. We have a rich body of knowledge, training, and experience for leader development. The question we must ask ourselves is how to adapt in a world where the dangers are always evolving and the demands on our soldiers are changing. How do we keep the Army profession always the standard for excellence?
The American people look at the United States Army as the protector of their freedoms, their liberties. So as long as we remain true to our values, I think that faith and trust will continue for centuries more.
Well, the Army as a profession is important as we look towards the future. It'll be the foundation of everything that we want to do as we build the Army of the future.
Whether it's in the words of an Army's senior leader or in the determined silence of a fresh recruit known only to his family and friends, whether it's in the actions of generations of battle-tried heroes or the single moment of human compassion, it is our character, competence, and commitment that makes the American soldier the best soldier in the world and the pride of the Army profession.
Fellow citizens, it is our duty to consistently demonstrate and develop military expertise, contribute honorable service, foster esprit de corps, our winning spirit, and provide stewardship of the Army profession. We are America's Army. This is our profession. A profession built on a bedrock of trust that comes from the disciplined practice to meet standards of excellence.
Well, I think the timing of the Army profession is critical. And I think at this great inflection point in our Army, where we're talking about a resource-constrained environment, the Army profession helps us shape our Army in terms of not only its size, but the expectation of what that smaller Army can do.
As a father of one of these kids in the military, I know about the Army profession, and I know that our soldiers expect great leadership and to be taken care of, just like the American public. When they give their sons and daughters to us, they expect the same thing.
People make excuses for themselves after they've been at war for a long period of time. What our soldiers are telling us is they don't want excuses. They want leaders who will hold them accountable to professional standards.
Standards and discipline in the civilian cohort are just as important as they are on the military side. When a civilian joins the Army, he or she takes the same oath of office that a soldier does.
The Army profession. It's our duty to do what is right in the face of temptations, obstacles, adversity, frustrations, fatigue, and fear. Properly established and practiced discipline with adherence to standards enables us to achieve this goal.
I think standards and discipline define an organization and ultimately define a profession. It is our ability to meet those standards of professional conduct on a day-to-day basis, both on and off duty, regardless of circumstances, that help define us as a professional.
And even if it's nice and sunny outside and it's perfect and you're having a good time doing it, it's just as important to hold those same standards when it's miserable outside.
We need to demonstrate to the American people that we are a profession with high standards and we meet or exceed those standards every day, efficiently, effectively, and ethically.
Standards are more than just formal, detailed instructions and codes of conduct. They are the benchmarks we use to measure performance, the milestones of excellence we strive for. Standards are who we are at our best, and they are describable, achievable, and measurable.
We have to know that when soldiers show up for their mission, that they can do it to standard and that they have the discipline to comply with that standard. That leads to trust, which is the bedrock of our profession and a critical aspect of being able to operate under the philosophy of mission command.
Well, I see being a steward of the profession of one who is going to sustain the profession for the next generation, to hold it close, to ensure that we are reminded of what this idea, this thing that we call the Army profession, is sustained across the force.
Military discipline begins with self-discipline and respect for proper authority. Discipline is behavior. It is not just punishment for wrongdoing. It's about doing what is right. It's the how and why we perform our duty.
Discipline, when enacted in the right way, shows pride. Folks that have pride and discipline in their unit, they tend to do them much more efficiently, much more effectively.
I think it's important for the soldiers and civilians that represent the Army to understand what the standard and discipline is.
What's going to get you there, what's going to make you or break you, is the things that you do when you think no one's looking.
Self-discipline is absolutely critical in the Army, and it's critical in the civilian cohort. We rely on those civilians to do the job that only they can do. And so they must not only have the skills to be able to do the job, but the commitment and the self-discipline to do it correctly every time.
Standards and discipline. It's about leadership, empowerment, and good decision-making. We are stewards of the profession, our property, our people, and our ethic, and are accountable for our actions. We diligently train, support, coach, counsel, and mentor to achieve a disciplined practice of our duty.
We really all have a role, not just the leader, but every individual has a role in policing and maintaining accountability of our profession.
If you are a member of the Army profession, it is impossible to engage in conduct like hazing or disrespect to members of other gender or races. It fundamentally undermines the standards and values central to the Army profession.
Standards and discipline sets the level of expectation we have of each other. So it allows us to operate in an area of trust amongst ourselves, and as we uphold those standards and discipline, it builds trust with the nation, with the American people.
Fighting and winning requires Army professionals with respect for our history and tradition, and committed to the highest standards of individual and collective excellence. Soldiers and Department of the Army civilians are stewards of the profession. All leaders enforce standards by teaching and inspiring an appreciation for the disciplined practice of meeting these standards of excellence.
As a leader, I think it's very important that I show that I know and know the importance of standards by leading from the front, by setting the example. I can never ask one of my soldiers to do something that I can't do.
When we ask the individual soldier to recommit to this thing called the Army and to be a professional, all we're doing is codifying what they already feel in their heart to be an American soldier.
My call to all non-commissioned officers, all leaders in our Army, is that we are going to be a more disciplined force. We are going to be a more professional force than we are now. And that is because you are going to take charge. So leaders, take charge.
We are competent. We have character. We are committed. Standards and discipline train us, inspire us, and remind us to always do what is right. We are America's Army. This is our profession.
Ladies and gentlemen, Army Public Affairs would appreciate audience feedback on this ILW Contemporary Military Forum and has placed a random sample of feedback forms throughout the room. If you have a feedback form on your seat, please take a few minutes to complete it. The form would provide valuable feedback that will help the Army gauge communication of key messages and will assist in planning future Army panels and forums at AUSA events. At the end of the forum, turn the form in either by placing it in the designated box as you exit the room, back there, or hand it to one of the Army Public Affairs representatives. Also, if you are interested in any of the Army profession topics discussed during this panel and would like more information such as products and handouts, please visit us at the Army Exhibit booth 1775, the Army Profession stations. Thank you for your time. We will begin shortly.
Hello, folks. Welcome to probably one of the most important panels we've ever had. As you can see, the chief turned out not only himself, but a lot of people who know a lot of things about the subject of professional development. This is the 19th year where we have had professional development forums. And I think our goal here at this annual meeting is to make sure that everybody understands that this entire experience is a professional development activity, from both visits to the displays to attendance at activities such as this and the family forums, and just being with each other and exchanging views about our profession. And our goal is to give you the opportunity to do all of that in one place so that you can get a feel for where the Army is going, and no place is more important than in the development of its human capital. Soldiers, non-commissioned officers, warrant officers, commissioned officers, and general officers. This is but one of 11 forums which will be conducted over the next 3 days. And this afternoon, the Army profession is the topic at hand, and the discussion will be led by Lieutenant General David Perkins, the CG of the United States Army Combined Arms Command, and centers at Fort Leavenworth. Fort Leavenworth, the soul of the Army. A special place, by the way. I'm going to turn the panel over to General Perkins in a second, but I want to thank the Chief of Staff of the Army for his enduring support and his efforts to make this annual meeting a success, along with his staff, the selfless people who make things happen in the Pentagon and elsewhere. And thank him and all of those who helped make this meeting possible. We really appreciate it, and I hope you appreciate the opportunities that are here these next 3 days. So, Chief, thanks a lot. We appreciate it. Now, Dave, I'm going to turn it over to you, and you can introduce the rest of the panel. Where are you, Dave? Right here. Okay, how about a nice hand for Lieutenant General Dave Perkins.
Thank you, sir. Well, as General Sullivan said and the Secretary said earlier today, this is a great professional gathering of some of the Army's best professionals. And as was noted earlier, and General Sullivan and I were just speaking before this started, that the profession of being a soldier in the United States Army is 1 year older than the United States of America. And the heart of what we do is being a professional. And as you walk around the hall and you go to these symposiums and you heard the opening discussions here and you could see the transitions from the Revolutionary War up till now, we are in one of those periods of transitions, and we're redoing Army doctrine, .mil-PF integration of a lot of major ideas out there. And a lot of folks will come to us, come to the chief, come to the leadership, say, how are you going to do this? How are you going to inculcate this change in the Army? How are you going to adapt? How are you going to encourage initiative and mission command and all that? And the answer is, it may sound simple, but it's actually quite complicated. And we are going to do that because we are a professional Army full of the highest level of professionals, really, not only the Army has ever seen, that the world has ever seen, and that it will be put in their stead to execute. And in fact, it would be impossible if we did not have the level of professionalism we have to do any of the initiatives that you're going to hear about this week here at AUSA. And to that stead, we have probably the most august panel to talk about that, and kind of their view of the Army profession, what professionals are in their role in it, and of course, none other starting off the conversation is Chief of Staff of the Army, General Odierno, who will talk about specifically trust is the bedrock of the profession. He'll be followed by General Cohn, Commander of Training and Doctrine Command, sort of leading the future of the Army, who will then discuss operationalizing the Army profession doctrine. We then will have Lieutenant General Hunt Doon, the Superintendent of the United States Military Academy, will discuss integrating the Army profession into pre-commissioning leaders. And then we're honored to have Mr. Snyder, the Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Army for MNRA. They'll talk about the unique requirement with regards to civilians and professional, and they're integrating the Army profession into our civilian cohort. We then will have Major General McMaster, the Commander of the Maneuver Center of Excellence, who will talk about military expertise and professional development at the Center of Excellence, and as we're raising those great young leaders. And then Sergeant Major of the Army Chandler is going to talk about standards and discipline, the role of the NCO Corps. And this coming year, we have a campaign of training and educating the Army profession, and we have a topic by each quarter. And the first one, rightly so, I think, is standards and discipline. And if you go down to the Army display down at Hall Bravo, at the Army display, there's a Center for Army Profession Ethics portion there that talks about the Army profession. A lot of material talks about our first quarter training program, which is standards and disciplines, which the Sergeant Major of the Army will talk about. So all of our guests here will have opening statements, and then we'll open it up to questions from the floor. So, sir, please start off.
Well, thanks, Dave. Appreciate it very much. And I know it must be fun moderating a panel with your boss and the chief and everybody else here, but I know you'll do a great job. The profession of arms is a topic that I asked immediately to be put on the agenda here because as I've become the chief, it's one of my 5 top priorities, the Army profession. And understanding what that means and understanding how that is to the core of everything that we do. because we are entrusted with ensuring the health and welfare of America's sons and daughters. They turn them over to us, and they turn, mothers and fathers turn their young sons and daughters to us in order to build them up into something more and help them to become part of something that's bigger than themselves. But greater than that, we are given an innate responsibility by our Constitution. And that is, we are trusted with the responsibility to ethically employ land combat power. And that's something that should never be taken lightly. There are very few other professions, in fact, that are, by Constitution, allowed to employ force and are given that responsibility. That is one of the most significant responsibilities you can be given, and it's important that we understand that that's fundamental to our profession. And so I just want to take a few minutes here to talk about what I believe is the most important thing of our profession, and that is trust. Our profession is built on the bedrock of trust. Trust is earned, it is not given. It is not rank-oriented. It is deeds, not words. It enables empowerment. It embodies what we call mission command, which is a whole nother seminar we could talk about. It is laterally and vertically, it's two-way. So I always start out by talking about trust between soldiers. What does that really mean? Well, we've learned that time and time again. All you have to do is listen to the young soldiers who have been in combat and how much they rely on the person to their right and to their left, to their front and to their back. You have to rely on them undeniably. You have to be there for each other in the most stringent of conditions. You have to believe that they will be there at the most important times. You must work as a team, and that trust must be built over time. It must be earned. It must be earned. It's important that all soldiers master their profession, whatever it might be. A rifleman, an artillery crewman, an aircraft pilot, a door gunner, whoever you might be, a logistician. We depend on you to understand what you do, because for us to be successful, we must trust that each and every soldier understands what their job is and how it's interrelated. And then it's about shared values and standards. And in this Army that we live in, we get people from all different parts of society. We get people from the rich part of society, the poor part of society, the northern part of the United States, the southern part of the United States. We get people from cities, we get people from the rural areas, we get people of every color, we get people of every religion. And they all come maybe with different interpretations about values and standards. And it's incumbent on us that we inculcate in them what we believe is our own professional standards. And that must start from the time they first come into the military, whether it be in basic training, whether it be at West Point, whether it be at ROTC, whether it be at basic officer training, and it must be consistently applied throughout the time we're in service. It's essential. Second is the trust between soldiers and leaders. It is absolutely fundamental and critical to our profession. The foundation to being an effective leader is that you've earned the trust of your peers, your subordinates, and your superiors. And I want to put emphasis on earned. I worry that sometimes we have too many people who believe just because they're a certain rank, they automatically deserve a certain amount of trust and respect. You have to earn it. You earn it by your actions, you earn it by your experience, you earn it by your ability to lead, mostly in the most difficult times. So that's incumbent on everything that we do. We have to have leaders that are willing to make tough decisions, that are willing to be honest and fair with their soldiers, who are willing to uphold the highest standards for their soldiers. That's how you develop trust between soldiers and leaders. A leader who believes in what he's doing, a leader who leads from the front, a leader who is able then to garner a respect that ultimately engenders trust from his subordinates and his fellow leaders. And then we have trust between the Army and the Army and our soldiers. And that's about the institution of the Army. Making sure that we're doing what we can in order to ensure we have the best trained, best equipped, most ready soldiers. When you ask me what as a leader can you do most as a professional for your soldiers, it's not to coddle them, it's not to be a nice guy, it's not to be their friend, it's to make sure that they are absolutely prepared for when we ask them to go in combat, they can do the appropriate mission. And they can protect themselves and they come back to their families. That's what their families want. That's what they want. That's what we owe to them. And then finally, it's about trust between the Army and the American people. And I don't take that lightly. When you see most polls, the Army and other military institutions are very high on the respect and a trusted institution by the American people. But that can't be taken for granted at any time. Because as I said earlier, they entrust their sons and daughters to us. They entrust that we will train them, we will provide them a learning environment that allows them to individually improve and then collectively improve as the whole Army. They hold us accountable for being ethically and morally correct as we execute one of the most important things we're given, the execution of combat land power. They expect us to withhold the higher standards. We represent the United States wherever we go abroad. Our actions represent the United States wherever we go abroad. And we must reflect the ethics and moral values of our country and our society and all of our institutions. So for me, trust is the bedrock of our profession. And what I want is when somebody comes up and sees a soldier, no matter where it might be, whether it's in Washington, D.C., whether it's in Kabul, Afghanistan, whether it's in Seoul, South Korea, whether it's in Baghdad, Iraq, that they understand that they're talking to someone who is a true professional, who understands his business, who has the moral and ethical values to make the right judgments, and causes them to say, I want to be just like him. And that's the strongest message that we can ever send. So thank you very much. This is a very important panel. I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
General Cohn.
I've been asked to describe how we are operationalizing the concepts of the Army profession, both in the institutional Army and in the operational Army. And let me start off with making sure everybody understands that this is not a one-year campaign. The way we have designed this is that the major concepts that have come out of the Army profession will be foundational to our leader development doctrine, to our training doctrine, and to, for instance, our command and control doctrine. And I'll talk to that in a second, the specifics of how we have built that in. There will also be a process of continuous assessment. And I think what's important is to understand that this is a living, breathing dynamic where we have to constantly measure what we believe we all know the standard to be and what our performance is on a year-to-year basis. We came to the conclusions in regard to the Army profession not as the result of a top-down directed process, but more importantly, probably the largest study on the subject of the Army profession that has ever been conducted. Numerous surveys, leadership surveys, numerous specific profession of arms surveys, numerous sensing sessions. That's good news, because when we talk about operationalization of the tenets of this, the fact is it resonates with our subordinates. These are their ideas. And I can just tell you, when asking them, did they want to be part of the military profession, or is being in the Army part of profession, over 90% said absolutely it is, and they want to be part of profession. You couldn't have asked
for a better response. They want to be part of this profession. And then they were quick to shift and identify areas where we were falling short as an Army in terms of meeting their expectations of what those standards were. And again, I think we'll talk to some of that, but very clearly fraying and standards and discipline, a lack of certification. You know, one of the things we know, for instance, in an Army, in a profession, is that you have to have standards of certification. And repeatedly, this came back to us that we were not keeping up in regard to ensuring that our subordinates had the professional military education that is commensurate with the rank that they were wearing. We talked about a number of different erosion in terms of leader responsibilities to subordinates in things like coaching, teaching, and mentoring. So these things are out there, and they helped us design a plan of action. And I think there were over nearly 60 specific recommendations that came out of the Army Profession Report. And a good, almost half of those reside under the responsibility of TRADOC in terms of implementation within the institutional Army, and the remainder are carryover into the operational Army. So it all starts with doctrine. One of the things they told us, as part of a profession, we have to be based on standards, discipline, and a unique body of professional knowledge, that which is doctrine. So, as you know today, we had the largest release of doctrine, and central to that, in each of these 30 manuals that have come out, are the fundamental precepts of the Army profession. And I think you can see them most evident in 622, the leadership manual, 6.0, our mission command manual that talks about how we lead soldiers in combat, and 7.0, which talks about training, because the nature of leader development and training are absolutely cannot be taken apart. So you see that the ability to rewrite this massive release of doctrine allowed us to put all of these concepts into these manuals and then crosswalk them. So there's a common terminology between these manuals and the ideas that are contained within. So then the question is, well, then how do you inculcate these doctrinal concepts into the force? Well, one part is fairly easy, and that has to do with really the institutional training that takes place in the TRADOC courses. And we are going through right now a major revision in our focus on things like the Warrior Leaders course, SLC, ALC,